Hello, everyone. My name is Sherry Nickerson, and I'm a director here at Old Line Government Affairs, and we welcome you to another edition of Online with Old Line. For this edition, we're thrilled to introduce Delegate Pam Queen. She's currently representing District 14 in Montgomery County. Welcome, Delegate Queen, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Well, thank you. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
I am as well. There's so much background to start off with here, but you're going to have to fill in the holes after I give a little bit of background on you.
Okay.
So Delegate Queen is a longtime resident of District 14. She's a military wife, a mother, and a college professor. She was born in New York City and graduated from DC Public Schools and Tuskegee University. She holds multiple master's degrees from Johns Hopkins University and a PhD from George Washington. She was appointed to the Maryland General Assembly in February 2016, where she has spent her time championing legislation which benefits working families, supports education initiatives, improves the lives of veterans, and supports business ownership for women and minorities. She is a member of the very powerful Economic Matters Committee and the chair of the Banking, Consumer Protection, and Commercial Law Subcommittee. Delegate Queen holds memberships in several community groups, including the League of Women Voters, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority, the Lynx, the National Council of Negro Women, and your slogan is to listen, learn, advocate, and act. So one of the things that has impressed me the most with working with you, Delegate Queen, is that you really take that slogan to heart. You actually really delve into the issues that are presented before you and really want to understand them and make your own decisions based on that. So that's been my experience working with you over this past year or so. So let's go ahead and get started. Delegate Queen, to get us rolling, can you just give a little bit of background on yourself? Anything I missed, anything you want to elaborate on, and then tell us about the district that you represent.
Sure. So I'll talk a little bit more because it'll kind of form how I approach things and why I'm the way I am. So as you mentioned, I was born in Manhattan, New York, but I grew up mostly in DC. And I was raised by my maternal grandparents. Both of them were from the South, Virginia, from Southern States, Virginia and North Carolina. But I went to live with my grandparents after my mother died, who was before I turned 1 year old. And so we'll talk about how that impacts some of the things I am focused on. But most of my aunts and uncles were like my siblings. And so I remember listening to a lot of Motown songs and going places on U Street that I wasn't supposed to be, but they couldn't leave the house unless they took me with them. And so I got to see a lot of things in the parts of DC, older parts of DC that people probably don't remember, or people my age wouldn't remember. I moved to Montgomery County. I've been there now about 40 years. I moved to Montgomery County actually a year before I had finished college. My husband had already graduated, and we actually moved to Olney, where I live now, about 5 years ago when my son was born. And so District 14 is just a great place to live. It's a large area in Montgomery County. You come to live there for all the reasons everyone else does. It's a great place to live, to raise a family, good schools, good community, a pretty safe neighborhood. It has rural parts. It has some of the congested areas. Where I live, not far from the Sandy Spring area, is a great historical site where the Underground Railroad went through, the Woodlawn area where Quakers still have a school and have lived, the Sandy Spring area, Sharp Street, United Methodist Church. United Methodist Church is the oldest church in Montgomery County. And so it's a really great, quiet place to live. You know, you have the occasional neighbors that can be a problem sometimes, but overall it's a great place to live. And so I really enjoy living there and representing that area.
That's great. So you were, like I said, appointed the first time you joined the Maryland General Assembly. Give us a little background there. Like, what happened? Who vacated? Who gave you
So, yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about that. So I've always, I think growing up in DC, you kind of are always following political things and really interested in the political process. With my sorority, you know, Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, the same sorority that our vice president is a member of. You know, are always busy with getting out the vote and making sure voters are engaged. But what really, I think, got me kind of involved in wanting to actually run for office was really after the 2014 election, and there were two women that from the area, African-American women who ran for office, and they lost miserably. And it really just made me start to think about the idea of, you know, running for office isn't just something you do because you live in a neighborhood and you want to, you know, do good. Is really a process you have to kind of learn and understand. And so, and also bothered me that, you know, at that point in time, at the state level, there wasn't any female of African-American female representing the state level. And, you know, this is 2014 and later. So
how things have changed in the last.
yes, it has changed a lot, and I'm very happy about that. So that was really a concern. So at that time, after that, I joined Emerge Maryland. It's an organization that tries to promote women to run for office, women with, you know, very progressive views to run for office at local and state level. They don't focus a lot on congressional campaigns. And then I took some other training about how to run for office. But around that time, soon after that, the state senator, Karen Montgomery at the time, who had won her election in 2014, served a year but didn't return. And so at that point in time, for the state level, you appoint a person to fill that term. We don't have special elections for a state level position. And so at that time, I was part of the Montgomery County Democratic Central Committee, had been a part of that for about 6 years at that time, and had just run, and in 2014 had run for the Central Committee. You actually run for office too as a volunteer or position, but you run for office and had just won that representing District 14 just in 2014. And so I became one of the candidates that applied for the open position and then was appointed. My goal was to run in 2018 anyway, but, you know, I was able to be appointed earlier. And so that was very helpful. It certainly was helpful for my 2018 election to already kind of be there and get to know Annapolis. I think it's a very interesting place and an interesting way about getting legislation done. And so that's kind of how I got there.
So it sounds like you were kind of a student of the process before actually being appointed / elected afterwards. How did your preconceived notion of what and how Annapolis was going to operate, how did it differ from like your understanding now of how things really work?
So again, like I was a student of the process that kind of followed legislative process from that of a constituent, that of an advocate. And so so you see that part of it and you think, okay, that's all it takes to get a bill done. And so, so that's a kind of a rude awakening, right? Because it's really not that simple. It's a lot of collaboration with people, working with the group, getting things done through other people, trying to understand. That's why I have the slogan of listening and learning the process. I'm constantly trying to learn how to better communicate your viewpoints to your colleagues and others, because again, you think about it at the state level, it's not like the county council, right? You have about, maybe 8 to 10 people that are making decisions. We have, 41 persons to deal with in the House side. And then you have, of course, the Senate. And so getting consensus or getting a consensus among these folks who have all different ideas or take a look at things very differently is a harder process. And so getting legislation passed really takes a lot of educating others, educating your constituents, really understanding why this is a important legislation. Why is it helpful? What is the benefit for not just someone in Montgomery County, but someone in Southern Maryland or on the western side? So that takes a lot of time and energy. So
Some people
that's been probably the biggest thing. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, some people don't realize that can be like a years long process, not just I'm going to file the bill this session and it's going to be out the other end by the end, so sometimes it's a years long process.
Multiple years process for some bills.
Exactly.
Multiple years.
So what do you feel like has been your biggest accomplishment since you've been elected? What are you most proud of?
I would say, if I'm just going to say one thing at this point and maybe talk about others, but I think the biggest accomplishment I think that I made from a legislative standpoint is the passing of the summer SNAP bill. And I don't know if you know about this bill, but one, it took 3 years to do it. So, and I'll talk a little bit about, again, alluding to how the process is. But in general, what the bill does is it allows for families that have, school-age children who are primarily receiving free and reduced meals during the school year to be able to, in the summer months when students aren't in school and so therefore aren't able to get those free and reduced meals, to be able to have extra money on their benefits, the EBT benefits, to be able to buy, groceries and food during the summer months to make up for that difference when the students aren't in school. So it provides extra money. I think it's only $10 a month. And so that sounds very little bit of money, $10 a month during the summer months and then over the Christmas break. And so the impetus for this bill was, again, just a lot of things, but the way I kind of approach legislation. So, I mentioned that I grew up at DC public schools, and I come from the first generation of college graduates. And so to have a PhD, for anyone to have a PhD is a lot, but certainly for someone who grew up in DC public schools and didn't have a family that went to college, the first generation to go to college. So that's one thing. The other is the idea that there's a lot of poverty that we have throughout the state. And I believe 20% of our children, 1 in 5, maybe now 2 in 5, but live in poverty, right? So that's a large number of kids. And in Montgomery County, we have students who are on free and reduced meals. We are the largest county, and the percentage of students we have on free and reduced meals is roughly the size of DC public schools. It's larger than the size of DC public schools. I tell people it's probably more, they could probably imagine it better if I tell them it's only 2,000 students less than Howard County's public school system. Right. So that's a lot of poor children that we're trying to take care of in Montgomery County. And so what the summer SNAP was doing is you get federal money from USDA towards this, and some of the counties that can afford to are applying money to it. And so what I was looking for was the state to provide some benefits, to provide some sort of match. And so that's basically what the bill does. The way it's written now, after it's changed over the years, but the way it's written now, the counties apply, they have to get the federal money, they apply. If they are providing some money themselves, they can get a match from the state. So it makes, you have to get money at the federal level, you have to do something at the county level, and then you get a match from the state. And so so that was an accomplishment. It took a while to get there. The first year when I introduced it, I just introduced it as a bill, being new, introduced it as a bill. I had not, talked to advocates about it. I hadn't really talked to other legislators about it. And so it basically had its hearing and kind of went nowhere. The second year, the advocates said, okay, we like this, we want to help get this done. And we took the approach that we knew with the number, I talked to the number we had in Montgomery County of students who are on free and reduced meals. You add the other jurisdictions and you're talking about a lot of money. Even though we're talking about $10 a month, we're talking about a major financial impact to the state. And so we took the approach, the advocates thought the best approach were to take the worst communities in the state, right? We'll do a pilot and just have, I think it was 4 areas that we thought about doing. Again, this is me with the advocates introducing the bills. We had not spoken to the representatives who represented those areas. And so that was my first lesson in
right.
Not introducing a bill for somebody else's jurisdiction and not having collaborated with them or talked to them about that. And so that became a real good lesson because, part of the feeling was, who are you from Montgomery County telling us how to handle, the issue of poverty in our jurisdiction. We're doing this and we're doing this. We didn't ask you to come tell us what to do. So that was kind of something.
Meanwhile, you think you're doing a good thing to help their counties out. Completely understandable.
Yes, and they're telling you, hey, you should have talked to me, and we talked about that. But one of the things that they said that really made us change how the bill was written, instead of it being a pilot, and now while we have the part where you have to support it yourself at that county level, was that it was this feeling that we don't, people don't like the idea of just giving me handouts. We want to be able to participate and to do our share. And so the idea that we had picked these jurisdictions for the pilot to give them money was, sort of like but kind of, not being respectful of their approach to handling issues and considering their way of doing things. And so that's why we put the part in that you could apply for it, if your county wanted to use it. And in that way, that really helped Montgomery County as well, because they could apply for it as well, and not just those, the pilot jurisdictions. And so that passed, and we still need to work on continuing to have it funded and to be able to, expand the availability of the funding. But that was just a great lesson on how to get things done in Annapolis. And again, you thinking you have a great bill that, everyone understands we need to do it, but, not getting it done because of, just, understanding how other jurisdictions work and how to collaborate and work as a team, folks. And so it also gets to the idea of, when we talk about students not doing well in school, we talk about all the loss of knowledge over the summer, let's get to the root cause. And could this be because the students are just hungry and the students need, this more nutrition to help them through the summer? So it's really, I think, a bill that really represents how to get things done in Annapolis, and then how I think about solving issues as it relates to problems we're facing.
So not only did you solve a problem for the state itself, but you also learned a lot from that experience. That in itself is valuable to have done. So that's great. So we've talked about what you're proud of and what you have accomplished. What do you have left out there that you like? What's your next big issue that you're already
So I have a few unfinished things that I'm trying to work on. One of the things that I had an opportunity to serve on this, and it's still ongoing. We just haven't done as much work as a recent with COVID, but this work group on economic stability. And what it does is, and what we've been doing with this work group is we did a survey of the various jurisdictions in the state to ask folks, what are your barriers to economic stability? What is it that, why is it people who are on maybe some of our safety net programs or some of the public safety, the public support, how can we, move you off of that? Why are there's, multiple families that get summer SNAP? Why is it then their children grow up and still use those same sort of benefits? And so what can we do to move folks off of, to get them to be sustainable and to get them off of some of those safety net programs? And so, some of the barriers they talk to is housing, not having stable housing, childcare, transportation, and, some of it is actually workplace training. So, this idea that, I may have a job someplace, but if I can't get to it because public transportation is unreliable, I can't, I'm not going to do well. From the standpoint of students doing well in school, it's very hard to do well in school once you're moving every year. You may be moving into different districts, and you just have that lack of stability. Child care is such a major impact to families. The cost is so high. And most of our Maryland families are having to work 2 incomes to maintain. So looking at those issues, and a lot of those issues became, very apparent during COVID, right? When we didn't have people, we had to stay home. And we saw the impact of not having, internet and some other kind of infrastructure in place. We saw the impact of people having to feed their children more because they didn't have the school, going to school and having the free and reduced meals. So we had a lot of, services we had to do to support that. And so we really need to really start to address some of those issues. So I've been trying to work on the child care piece of it for a while. I'm going to be trying to look at some more legislation around that. Child care hurt us in multiple ways. One, families not having child care, but also having the money to pay, but also a lot of the child care providers were women, and they're in a low income service industry. And so that was a big impact to them as well. Some of those facilities have closed. And so that's going to be really a problem that we're going to really have to look at going forward. So I'll probably be looking at a lot around that, some around maybe housing. We saw how housing instability is an issue. What programs can we get people from renters to homeowners, getting some stability around that is another area that we'll be trying to focus on. And then just, which of these benefits are needed to help folks, but also don't have them too reliant such that they can't get out of it for the next generation. The next generation can't overcome and be more sustainable. So we're going to look at some models of what they call second generation. They call it the 2-gen approach to addressing some of the issues of poverty and economic instability. How are other states doing it, and what we can do to move people off of having multiple generations of poverty and reliance on public assistance.
That's no small task, I know.
It'll be several years, I'm sure too, but it is something I think we definitely need to address.
Well, and it sounds like you're very passionate about that too. So you've got the smarts and the passion to actually, effectuate change. So I think that's great, and your district's lucky to have you representing them there. And
thank you. We hope so. We'll see.
So to wrap things up, can you tell us one unique thing or fun fact about yourself?
So I'm not sure how fun it is, but I think one of the things that that you alluded to is that I'm just this this eternal learner. I'm always trying to learn things and, you know, understand new things. And so I think I sent you a picture where I was visiting the Josiah Henson Museum in Montgomery County, which is a new museum in Montgomery County, which talks to me, maybe it's nerdish, I'm not sure. But if you ask me what is if I was to go on a fun date or a fun thing to do, I would say, what's your local museum? I want to go visit it. So that would be if I'm in another state or any place else. And again, growing up in DC, my girlfriend and I, we would just walk downtown to the Smithsonian museums. And I didn't realize until I was an adult that people paid to go to museums in other cities. I'm like, what do you pay to go to a museum? I go to a free museum every day of my life. You know, every Saturday or whatever, we felt like going to a new museum down in DC. We didn't pay anything to do it. So that's kind of me. I do enjoy learning, always trying to learn something new. And again, when you go to different cities and stuff and you visit the museums, it kind of gives you a little culture and feel of that area and that state. So that's kind of me, just to be a fun person at the museum. You may be surprised one day and see me at the museum and like, I think I know her. I'm not sure who she is, but I've seen her face before. Yeah, that would be me. So that's kind of what I do.
Well, I think that's great. And again, you know, that goes back to what I said, that, you know, my experience with you has been that you are an eternal learner and you really want to understand what you're voting on, what you're advocating for, what you really want a sincere understanding of what you're doing. And then you go on to make your own decisions. And I think that's, you know, commendable, very commendable.
Thank you.
So, thank you, Delegate Queen, for taking the time to be with us today. We really appreciate it. It's been a very interesting conversation. And for more conversations with legislators and more online with Old Line, please visit us at oldlinelobbying.com.